The Underneath, Part 4, Thorns. Adeena gasped for air as she ran through the forest, wincing against the twigs and branches that caught on her clothes and slapped her face. As she burrowed deeper into the foliage, she felt her foot snag an exposed root, and then she was tumbling downhill, tucking her arms and knees into her chest to avoid injury. She finally came to a rest in a small valley, groaning from the bruises she'd accrued along her descent. Reaching up, she tried to straighten her hijab, but it was gone. All she felt was her long, brown hair piling up around her neck and shoulders. "Oh no," she lamented aloud. "My parents are going to kill me." Standing up, she moved forward, retrieving the compass that had miraculously survived the fall with only a small crack in the glass. The needle swiveled for a second, settling on its magnetic pole. South, Adeena remembered, and I'm going southeast. She trekked into the trees, following the compass directions as she dove deeper into the forest. Soon, the sounds of Ahab's battle faded, along with every other noise beyond Adeena's own breath. She felt the temperature drop rapidly as darkness encroached upon her on all sides, and she wished that she'd had the chance to ask Ahab for a flashlight before her exodus. Or whatever they used for flashlights, she corrected herself aloud. Suddenly, a little girl's voice called out in the distance. "Hello? Is someone there? Please help me." Lowering her compass, Adeena angled to the left, rushing toward the voice. "I'm coming!" She pushed her way through a particularly dense thicket, stumbling out the other side into a small clearing. In the center of the grassy spot sat a small, black-haired underneath girl, quietly crying into her baby blue dress. As Adeena approached, the girl looked up, wiping away her tears, smiling back with her thin, red lips. "I thought I heard someone," the girl whispered. "It's okay," Adeena said, easing into the clearing. "It's just me. How did you get all the way out here?" Something scratched her ankle, and she looked down to see a small thorn bush nestled against her leg. Pulling away, she glanced around the clearing. Similar bushes circled the space, small and almost unnoticeable. But Adeena noticed, and her blood ran cold as she remembered Ahab's words. "Beware the thorns." "Honey, come over here," Adeena whispered, crouching to the same level as the girl. "This is a dangerous part of the forest." The girl rose to her feet, smiling wider. "Not for me." "Excuse me?" Adeena asked. "I said, this isn't dangerous for me," the girl repeated, "and it isn't dangerous for them either." Her eyes drifted upward into the trees, and Adeena followed suit. High above, stretched between the branches of the clearing, hung thick, gray spider webs, each strand almost the thickness of Adeena's forearm. Thousands of small, black, fist-sized spiders scurried across the web, and as Adeena watched in horror, they began to descend toward her on their own strands. "But you're right about one thing," the girl continued, her voice lowering an octave. "It is dangerous for you." 8 large, black legs emerged from her neck, applying pressure to her shoulders until her head popped right off like a Lego figurine. Instead of blood, however, more black spiders fountained from the girl's neck stump, tumbling to the ground and crawling in Adeena's direction. The girl's head also leapt to the grass, quickly scurrying forward. "No!" Adeena screamed, backing out of the clearing. "Get away!" The 8-legged head hummed. "You'll make a nice new vessel." Adeena spun around, sprinting back into the trees, panic accelerating her heartbeat. After a minute, she snatched the compass from her pocket, realigning herself back towards southeast. She heard skittering sounds as tiny, sharp legs clacked across the bark-covered trees and rocky earth, and she tried not to imagine their pincers digging into her head, hollowing out her skull. "Come back, little one," the spider girl sang. "It'll only hurt for a moment." Adeena felt darkness encroach upon the edges of her vision as she hyperventilated, her feet pounding against the forest floor. Strands of web whipped past her on both sides, adhering to the tree trunks and growing taut. Ahead, sunlight exposed another clearing through the foliage, and Adeena aimed for that, hoping to shift directions and lose the spiders in the process. Large thorns whipped across her face as she broke through, and she felt blood trickle down her nose from a cut on her forehead. She tripped, falling face first into the dirt. Silence surrounded her, and she paused, holding her breath. No girl's voice, no scurrying spider legs, no flickering web strands. Slowly, cautiously, Adeena rose to a seated position, turning to look behind her. Staring back, only inches from her face, sat the sharp-toothed, spider-legged girl's head. Adeena covered her mouth, crawling backwards, further into the clearing. She looked around at the spider girl frantically, realizing that the trees surrounding the clearing were black with the bodies of fist-sized spiders. They shuddered, but from excitement or from fear, Adeena couldn't tell. "You're lucky," the head whispered, its eyes darting around the clearing nervously. "You're lucky this time." With that, the spider creatures retreated back into the forest, disappearing into shadow. Adeena exhaled slowly, the action evolving into a long sigh of relief. She stood to her feet, almost kicking a large red and black flower almost a foot away. Stepping back, she admired the flower's beauty, spotted pattern spiraling into an almost shiny-looking center. As she watched, she realized that the clearing was littered with similar flowers, like a little garden. "Are these flowers what scared away the spiders?" she thought to herself. "Maybe they're toxic or something." Adeena began to back away, checking the edges of the clearing for lingering spiders, when the flowers began to vibrate. She paused again, anxiety welling up in her chest. "What now?" she muttered under her breath. One by one, the flowers exploded into the air, filling the clearing with small, buzzing dots. The dots swept around her, blowing back her hair, and rushed beyond the clearing, leaving the once lush space black and decaying. Adeena stood in silence for a moment, wide-eyed, but the clearing remained calm, though far less pretty than before. Something tickled the back of her left hand, and she looked down to see one of the dots had stuck around. Leaning closer, she realized the thing looked like a ladybug, with a red carapace covered in black dots. This ladybug, however, was tiny, no larger than the head of a match. It slowly crawled across her skin, heading for her fingertips, but it made no attempt to bite or sting her. "Adeena!" a voice called in the distance. Adeena froze. "Allah help me," she thought. "If those spiders are back, I'm just going to die right here." "Follow the sounds of our voices," a second person chimed in. This time, she recognized it. "Ahab?" she hesitantly responded. "This way," she heard John call. "You're close to the other side." Adeena looked at her hand, but the little ladybug had vanished. The spot where it stood itched a little, but as she scratched it, the sensation went away, leaving behind a numb patch of skin about the size of a quarter. She shrugged, jogging to the other side of the clearing and peering beyond. In the distance, she saw what appeared to be a pair of flashlights waving back and forth through the trees. Hurrying toward the lights, she grew close enough to make out 3 humanoid silhouettes, their sizes wildly varied. After a few more steps, she saw the faces of Ahab, John, and Trina emerge from the gloom. "Thank goodness, it's the 3 bears," she said. Ahab looked at the others. "If Trina's too small and John's too big, does that make me just right?" Adeena blushed. "I guess it does." Something scurried through the treetops, and John looked up, gripping a shotgun. "I advise we leave." Nodding, Adeena followed the others through the trees, absently reaching down to scratch her hand again.